Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello everyone, welcome back to Right on Track. I am very excited to be joined by one of my friends and fellow songwriters. Please welcome Paige Ruderman. Hey Paige!
Hey, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to be here. I've been hearing so much about the podcast. I've checked out the podcast. You've had such amazing guests on so far. And so I just really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you. We've been writing incredible songs, so it was only right to invite you on. And today we're going to be talking all about free writing, which is one of my favorite things in the world, and I know you love this tool as well. But before we get into our very fun free writing experience that we're going to share with everyone today, can you share with all of the listeners a little about yourself and how you got started in songwriting?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. My name is Paige. I have been a big fan of music pretty much my entire life, starting at 4 years old, listening to Spice Girls and Shania Twain cassettes. And then I just followed that interest. Starting in fourth grade, I learned the clarinet. And so I played classical music in some of my school bands. And that led me to marching band in high school and in college. And I just always had this big passion around music, listening to it, being a fan, following bands that I was interested in. And then to be really honest with you, I had always dreamed of singing my own songs, but I had never put two and two together that, hey, why don't you just try writing some of your own until it was the pandemic. And when I was at home and I had so much time on my hands, that was kind of this little light bulb moment of, hey, you've always been interested in this thing. Now is the time to try. Life is short. You should really try it if you're interested. And that just led me down a road of trying to find different resources and tools for songwriting. And then I would say I really started writing my own material probably January of 2021. So it's now, in September around 2022. So it's been a little over a year and a half. And in that time, I've been able to just learn more and get to meet really great songwriters like yourself. And that's led me to enjoying the process of writing my own material, which I would say I'm primarily in the pop genre, but I listened to so much variety growing up that I have a lot of influences from a lot of different places.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love your journey from always loving music and then having that big light bulb moment during the pandemic to really dive into songwriting yourself. I feel like a lot of songwriters have started just simply as a fan and having a special connection with music and then finding out, hey, I can do this too. And so I'm really excited for you. You have so much to offer and you've grown so much even over the time we've been writing. So I'm so excited to see what the future holds for you and your songwriting.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what was so astonishing to me is growing up, I had all these songs that I really connected to the lyrics and I loved listening to them because it felt like the music understood the emotions or the experiences that I was living through. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized like writing the music is different than having to know all the different pieces behind creating music. Like there are people out there that love production or love the vocal singing technique and love, instrumentation and such. And I thought to put out your own music, you had to be good at everything, and that was what was so intimidating about starting because it was like, well, I don't know all of these pieces. How can I ever write my own song? And it wasn't until I was older that I realized, hey, you can start off by just writing your own lyrics and coming up with your own melodies. And so, yeah, I cannot wait to dig into today's topic. So, and talk more about that.
Perfect. I completely agree with everything you said about the misconception of songwriting being that you have to know every aspect of it. And once you kind of realize that's totally false and everybody brings something to the table and you collaborate to create great music, I think it just lifts a huge weight off your shoulders because you don't have to do it all alone. And I think the most beautiful thing about music is being able to write songs with others, working with musicians and producers in the studio and bringing all those other people on board to contribute to your musical journey. So, yeah, let's transition into free writing. So, for the listeners who do not know what free writing is, this is basically a songwriting technique where you can maybe set a timer for 5, 10 minutes or do it however long you want, where you're basically journaling in a way, dumping a bunch of thoughts, feelings, emotions, images, whatever comes to mind in a very unfiltered way. And this is a fantastic tool. So, Paige, why is free writing something you love to do as a songwriter?
I really like free writing because it takes the pressure off of feeling like everything you say or everything you write has to be gold. I think so many people, when they're starting to write songs, they look at some of their favorite artists and songs that they really love, and they're just like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to write like that. I felt like that so many times. But you have to remember those songs are in their finished form, and so many things had to come into that song before it was finalized. And so with free writing, it kind of just takes that pressure off of me of knowing like everything I write needs to be used. And it's just a great way to get kind of those thoughts that are almost like fluff and filter out. So that way you can start to find the pieces that you actually want to use.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. And the thing with that is like when you're free writing, you're completely non judgmental and you're allowing yourself to say whatever you need to say. It's very much like a journal or a diary where you're just like pouring everything you need to get out of your system. And the cool thing with that is when you're not really analyzing what you're writing, that really brings up deeper things in your subconscious and things that have been on your mind. And when you allow yourself to be so authentic and free with the things you're writing, whenever you go back through that, you're going to find stuff in there that maybe you didn't consciously think of because you're allowing yourself to not think too much about your thoughts and your feelings and maybe experiences you're going through. So I think the free writing opens so many doors of concepts that you can write about. There's lyrical gems in there, title ideas, and those are things that when you're trying to figure them out on your own, like if you're walking around outside thinking, I need to write a verse right now to a song about nature or whatever, you're going to feel a lot of pressure and get tripped up over lyrics and rhyme and everything. But when you allow yourself to just write, those things surface on their own. And I think that's so incredible.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, and especially about the free writing and like the non judgmental. I can only speak from my experience that it didn't start out that way. That was the goal, but when I first started writing, it took a little bit of time until I figured out how to just start being more of a free flow person and just allowing things to come out. And I think that honestly came with practice. The more I started journaling, and sometimes I still do think of it as just journaling almost like in a journal the way you would at the end or start of a day. And when you go back later with kind of like a fine-tooth comb, you're able to find things that you would have never used if you were trying to capture it in the moment, but when you come back with kind of like a fresh perspective like you were saying, you're like, "Oh, I hear that in a new way," or "That resonates with me in a new way," and then you find a way to repurpose it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you were talking about like free writing in the sense of journaling, like when you first wake up or before you go to sleep or whatever. But I think the other thing is that if you have an idea for a song, like you can free write to get ideas for songs, but if you have an idea and you want to develop it more, free writing is an amazing way to ground yourself in that concept because this is why I have started to free write every single time I write. It can be a solo write or a co write. I do this every single time because something I struggled with when I started songwriting before I knew free writing was a tool was I would start to songwrite and, get my song going. And I would realize that the story was too complex. At some points, I didn't even know what I was trying to say anymore. And so, free writing to really ground yourself in a concept can help because it helps you stay centered in what you're trying to say and have something to go back to if you start to wander off or feel stuck.
I think I've really grown my free writing right before writes in working with you and getting to write songs with you. But before we started writing together, there were a few songs that, maybe you had a concept or maybe I had a concept or I had a title and I was just like, I can't figure out what to say, but I want to use this. And I found the free writing to be really helpful.
For sure. So, before we do our free writing activity for the lovely listeners, what is one song of yours that came directly from a free write that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I love this question. So there is a song that I wrote solo called Cars. That's the title. And this was a song that I'll be really honest with you, I wanted to write for a long time about this concept, but I couldn't figure out what to say. And I didn't know how I wanted to word it to get my intention across. And if I'm being honest with myself, maybe I wasn't exactly even sure what my intention was early on. And so I had learned about this free writing technique. And one night I was just sitting at home and I had this desire to want to write a song and I wanted to write about this topic of mine. And I just took out a journal and I just started writing. I wrote the title concept at the top, which was cars, and I've kept that as the title. And I was just like, I'm gonna write down every single thing that I wanna say about this. Whether it was like my experience living it, the journey I had, what do I wanna feel? How did I feel? What do I want other people to feel hearing this story? And I think I had like 4 or 5 pages of stuff. It was a lot. And then I went back through and I pulled out what are the things that I wrote that I think I would honestly wanna use. And that took what was maybe 4 or 5 pages of material down to about 2 pages. And then I went through and said, "Okay, do I kinda have a melody?" And I had this really simple melody in mind, but it just felt really helpful to get the vibe across that I wanted. And so I just kind of started humming that melody to myself as I was looking at the words, and different lines were kind of poking out to me. And I really just used that to construct the entire song. And at the end, I was so happy with what I had written because it was really what I wanted to say. But when I had sat down with this intention of, oh, I want to write a song about this concept, it would have been probably really hard to get to the same end result if I hadn't taken the steps to write down everything that I could possibly think of before I started.
I love that story. I love how you had 4 or 5 pages. That's a lot of material, and the fact that you made a effort to really go through that, choose what resonated, and make a song from that. That's incredible because since you wrote that song from a free write, everything in that song is meaningful and is authentic. And the best way to be authentic as a songwriter is to pull material from free writing because that comes directly from you. And I love Cars. It's still one of my favorites you wrote on your own. And so it's true, like free writing definitely works and it brings up incredible material and it turns into great songs for sure.
Sometimes it's those really specific examples of things that I never lived through, but I can still relate to. That's what I loved so much about other music that I listened to. And so I try to incorporate that in my own stuff. And I find that just trying to come up with that off the cuff, it doesn't always work. But the free writing examples or the free writing practice really helps you get there.
For sure, absolutely. So, like I said, I do free writing every single time I write a song, but one that's coming to mind specifically is my song called Quiet that I'm going to be recording for a new project I'm working on. And this song was one of those things where I had a concept that was very loose. And basically, my idea that I initially had was how there's power in silence. And sometimes when you stay silent, that can send a stronger message than if you're using your voice and actually speaking how you're feeling. And so I've always been one to like, if I'm going through something, I will keep my mouth shut. And like sometimes there's power in the silent treatment and makes someone really realize, maybe you wronged me or whatever. And so I had that idea and I did a free write very centered on my thoughts and feelings. But then I also branched off and started listing words and things that came to mind when I thought of silence and quiet, like whispering and tiptoeing and the silent treatment and holding my tongue and things like that. And so it was really cool because this song became super atmospheric. And I want to say like 80-90% of the lyrics were straight from this free write. And it just came together so naturally because the free write allowed me to get into that concept.
Yeah, and Quiet is such a good song. I have had the pleasure of getting to listen to it, and it's so amazing, and you really captured a lot of those emotions in the lyrics, so that's super cool you're able to use so much of your free write to get the final lyric down.
For sure. So, Paige and I are now going to do what we do when we get on a co writing call. So, we need to first decide what we're going to write about. So, I have two ideas and Paige has two ideas. So, Paige, why don't you start? What are your two ideas that you're going to bring to the table?
Okay, so I brought 2 different types. The first is a concept, and so, the concept is the love song I'd write if I've ever been in love. And so that's not a title, that's not a line, but it's just kind of this concept of that song. And then the other idea that I brought is a actual line or a potential actual line, and it's good weather, palm trees, sunshine, and a cool breeze because I think it could be really fun to write a fun, happy summer song. And so those are my 2 ideas.
I love both so much. This is gonna be hard to pick. uh, so my two is I have a concept, and this first one is the idea that when things happen to you, like if someone does you wrong or you're in some kind of situation that you don't want to be in, it can be easy to get frustrated and try to change someone's mind or change a situation. But at the end of the day, the only thing you can control is your mindset and how you allow yourself to react to that. And so I kind of got the concept of you having the power to make a choice of how you're going to see the good or silver linings in these situations that you don't feel are that great. So that's one. The other one is a title idea that I kind of had a play on words or twisting of the title idea. So the title is In It For You. And the way that this will go is like, say it's like a friendship or a relationship or something, and you are completely in it for this other person. Like, I'm in it for you. And so you're invested and like everything they're doing, you're like basking in their triumphs and successes, and you're in it for them, in it for the long run. But on the flip side of this person is only in it for things that they can actually benefit from. So it's that thing where like you don't care unless there's something in it for you. But on the other hand, I'm committed and I'm fully in it for you. So those are my two ideas.
Ooh. And I think the most important thing that, both of you and I both love to remember is just because you pick one today doesn't mean you can't write the other ones tomorrow. Like you can always keep a running list of all of the ideas that you come up with. Especially because I think all 4 of these are really good.
I know, I want to
So
write all
it'll be
four.
hard for us to pick. So it's also kind of like, okay, great. We pick one today, we free write on it, we write it, and then you pick another one, next time. Is there one that's kind of resonating with you now?
So the one of yours that's resonating the most is your first one about like writing a love song if you were in love. So that one. And then of the two of mine, the one that's sticking out more is the second one, the In It For You one.
Okay, I agree. I think the love song one could be really, really fun. That one has been on my list for a little bit of time. Um, and I haven't written a love song yet. So I think that could be or in a long time. So I think it could be really fun to do that. And then I like the In It For You. I feel like that one's cool too. Um I think right now I might have more ideas about the love song one. Um but I think both could be really fun.
I agree, and this is really cool, and this is perfect to discuss here. The love song one, there's already a bunch of images that are coming to mind, like sensory details, whereas In It For You, I think we need a little more thought because that's more like abstract. So I think like that one would take more work to kind of paint a vivid picture and create an immersive story aspect. Whereas the love one already has a lot of different directions you can go with imagery and sensory details as well. So why don't we go with that one for today?
Okay, that sounds fun. And again, we can always use the other ones another time. And one thing that you and I always do when we write is we have a Google Doc up and we write all of our notes in there. So I have that open and I'm just moving that idea down here. So that way I have it.
Awesome. So let's start with what you kind of envision for this because this was your idea. So let's free write a bit on your concept itself.
Okay. So when I first came up with this line, I'm a big reader of like, I love books. I love romance books or, cliche rom coms. I love watching that kind of stuff. And it's fun being like someone who watches or reads because you're experiencing these things that these characters have gone through. But I have not particularly ever had one of those long-term relationships that are, you know, the making of a movie and such. And I kind of just had this thought to myself. I'm like, how fun would it be to write a song as if I was one of these main characters in a story or in a book, just like head over heels in love and, all the things I would want to say about a partner if I was in a long-term, loving relationship. And so that was kind of like the original inspiration behind this concept.
I love that, and it's super relatable. I'm in a similar boat, so super relatable. When you were talking, the making of a movie jumped out at me as like a possible song title
Mm, yeah, I'm writing that down.
because I think like that can also tie into you see these things in the movies, and everything is so dramatized in
Perfect.
a way and perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
like everything is like so flawless. The guy's always hot and he has a flaw that like the girl likes because it brings out the best in him and stuff. And I think like even though it's so picture perfect, it's like you try to look for that in real life. And maybe you have a friend. Like we all have friends who have that, and it's like, yeah, your life is like a movie, but unfortunately, not all of us get to live that. And so I think the making of the movie is like you want the opportunity to experience this where it's kind of like this picture perfect thing that you only think can happen in fiction, but you actually want that in your reality.
Yeah, I love that idea. The picture perfect. I'm writing this down. And especially when you were talking about how it's like so dramatized, I think the other good thing about kind of trying to find a title or at least trying to find a main line that you might center your song around is then you can start to say, okay, if the title is the making of a movie, then you start to get those concepts of like, well, what goes into a movie? So there's like the script and there's a balance of both like external and internal details or sensory imaging, external sensory, internal sensory things. And maybe I'm not picking the right words here, but you can get both the things that you physically would see and then the things that you would feel. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so I think what we have like with our initial chat here, before you brought up the sensory side, that content I think is good for the chorus. Like you saying like, "I want a relationship, that's the making of the movie, blah, 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 blah." So that's like the big concept stuff. But what you're bringing up now, which we can transition and get more content for, is like what actually makes a movie. The script is a great one. Also in romance stuff, like there's a thing called the meet cute, which is like where you first, meet. Um, and so it can also be like you opening up this story or this movie of your ordinary life and you hoping to find this person, and then it transitions to the scene where you meet them. Um, and also with the movie thing too, it's like it's for entertainment, right? So it's very dramatic, very like unfolding in twisty ways. So obviously you're going to meet challenges that you have to overcome. And then obviously if you're talking about a romance movie, there's a happily ever after and all of that. And also with the movie that I'm thinking of, it can be like other people are watching the movie, right? And so then if you're the one in this movie, then other people may be envious of you or just like maybe getting inspiration or maybe even hope from your love story. So you can even take it to the viewer side too of the movie.
Yeah, or even people kinda like your friends and family who are watching from afar, and they're just, like, rooting for you,
Yeah.
and they just, like, it's almost like every time I have this experience where I bring, and this is my personal experience, but, like, I always give nicknames to any guy I'm kinda interested in. Like, I was talking to this one guy, and his name was Kevin, and he was a DJ, and so I was like, "Oh, DJ Kevin," and it was just kinda like this nickname to, like, refer to this person. And so every time I would talk to my friends, I'd be like, "Oh, DJ Kevin, blah, blah, blah." And so then your friends are almost these spectators in this story who are following along, who are either like rooting for it to work, like, "Oh, I really hope it works out," or like, "I really don't like him. Why are you talking to him still?" And I think that's cool too, how there's both these like either people are like rooting for you or not rooting for you, and then you have to choose, do I agree with my friends and family or do I see something different? I don't know. Just talking out loud and not being afraid to, I think when you're free writing too, it's important to like not be afraid about any idea that you share that might be silly. Like I say so many things that are not used, just to get them out of my brain.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I really like the idea too because in romance books and if we're sticking to movies, there are those supporting characters of say the heroine who they're rooting for her, but then obviously like it's not going to be a perfect unfolding love story, so there are going to be external conflicts. Maybe that's his family. Maybe it's something that divides you two in some other way. And so I really like how you brought up like making a choice, like if it's your family that's standing in the way or some other thing, it's like rising above that. And I think that's really cool as well. For sure. So yeah, so we have a lot on the movie side. And so another thing that we can toss in here too is like love imagery. So let's list some things that have to do with love. So like I'm thinking like roses and weddings, like bouquets, veils, other flowers, Valentine's Day, the color red, color pink, hearts, um, candlelit dinners.
Yeah, lit dinners. I also think of like the physical. So like holding hands or like driving in the car when you're in the passenger seat and he's in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking um holding the door open for you or calling you to make sure you made it home safe.
Also, like diamond rings, promises, long nights together, somebody you can trust and like open and honest. Um, Also like a comforting, safe space where you know you're accepted.
I always used to say the thing that I always wanted most in a relationship is someone to just be in my corner.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted that person that was like your ride or die. your person that will always be there to support you, that kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah, and also too, it's like if you want to take this more personal, like as a songwriter and all of that, there are people out there who don't support people in the arts because they're like, yeah, you can take a better path, something more sustainable, blah blah blah. And so if someone is not a creative person, whether that be acting or a songwriter or painter or
Mhm.
novelist, like if you're not,
Photography, yeah.
yeah, if you're not in that realm, then you don't really get it. And so I think it's really cool how you brought that up because whether or not the person you're with is a creative person or not, they should support you in anything you choose to do, you know?
Mhm, mhm. And yeah, I think the most fun thing about songwriting is learning to draw the it's learning to walk the line of being able to incorporate things from your personal life so that it feels true and authentic to you, while also depending on who you are and like how much stuff you want to advertise to the world, um also like figuring out what you do and don't want to share. And so in our free writes, I usually share like a lot that might not even make it into the song, but like helps bring up ideas that might make it into the song. So like maybe you'll talk about, you know, your family dynamic and like why you're looking for a support system. Maybe it's because you don't have that at home or it's not provided in a way that you're seeking out. And so I think it's fun to kind of go down those rabbit holes too.
For sure, and I love that because that's perfect with the song you and I just finished writing. Because when it started, I was listing a whole ton of like extremely specific stuff. And then I was like, I told you, I sent you an audio message and I was like, I think this is way too specific because you want it to be personal and specific enough to you where you personally connect with it. But like you said, it can't be too specific where the only one who will get it is you. And so I think balancing out, making it universal and personal is really important. And I think a lot of the ideas we have so far with this making of a movie idea is, you know, like everybody has watched movies, they get that side of it. We've all rooted for characters, we've all hated characters. We all understand that with the love side of it. You know, whether or not we ourselves have been in a serious relationship, we know people who have been. So we have probably been to weddings and we've probably, like, you know, have been given flowers or seen someone give someone else flowers or red roses or whatever. So these are all things that even if we haven't exactly been in those shoes, we can still relate because it's something we've witnessed in some way.
Yeah, and at least for me, when I'm writing, I tend to also get kind of like movie images in my mind.
For sure.
Funny that we're talking about like movie as a title or a concept here, but it's like I'm almost picturing like if every song was a music video, what am I seeing?
Yeah.
And I tend to get the more I can see that picture, the more excited I get about the song. And so with this particular song, I'm already seeing like kind of like little birdies holding up the curtains and they bring them up and you're kind of the sun is shining and the birds are chirping and the flowers are sprouting and you're going for this walk and it's kind of like how can you set the tone in what you see too. And so if I like right now I'm even seeing like if it is a movie maybe it's like now I'm getting a little off track here but are who is listening to the song? Is it the person sitting in the audience watching the movie? Is it the character in the movie? What, you know, how much detail do you want to give detail about the theater that the audience is sitting in with the golden, you know, seating and the plush red velvet seats, you know? So, I think it
Yeah.
all that also makes it fun too.
No, for sure. I love that. I love how you brought that up because that's perfect. And this is a perfect example of different perspectives. Like you just listed various different ways this story can be framed. And I think that's awesome. And when you were talking about like the opening, that's kind of like an opening thing or just like an experience when you were like walking in the sunlight and the flowers. I think too, it's like one thing that we can kind of chat about to wrap up this free writing is some people want all the glamorous stuff. So if you're talking about the making of a movie, it's real glamorous and, you know, maybe super dramatic and sometimes a little realistic. But for me personally, like, I just want something chill, um, walks on a Sunday afternoon, lawn drives at moonlight. I don't want some really fancy, I mean, I wouldn't say no to a fancy dinner, but, like, I don't mind, like I don't mind, like, a picnic, and, like, I don't know, just give me flowers randomly, like, I don't need something expensive, just thoughtful things, and I think a cool twist that this song could have is, like, the making of your movie is about the things that matter. It doesn't need to be all fancy and glamorous. It's getting to the roots of like what exactly true love is and stripping away the materialistic kind of stuff and showing like this is all I need and this is my movie.
Yeah, and I think what was so fun about what you were talking, I love what you said. I added my own words here, but it's like not something expensive, just thoughtful things. Like that's such a good line.
For
So
sure.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
highlight that one.
absolutely. Well, Paige, we have a lot of great content, and this is a great example what we just did of how to do free writing in a collaboration because it was really cool because the things you were saying were sparking new ideas for me. The things I was saying were sparking new ideas for you. And I think that's the coolest thing about when you are doing a free write with a co-writer, you need to be open and not judgmental. Whereas if you're doing a solo free write, you're not judging yourself. In this instance, like you have to let the other person be comfortable enough to be able to spill ideas. And I think you and I have so many great ideas. Like I would like to write this song at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you like I would really like to write this song.
So yeah. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, this was lots of fun. What do you think is one final piece of either wisdom or personal experience about free writing that you would like to share with the listeners?
I will say the one piece of advice and the skill that I was taught, I actually learned it from you, is don't just be content with like the first two or three things that you write down. Ask yourself, what else can I say about this thing? If we were listing, for example, when we were listing love imagery and we got like holding hands, roses, weddings, and bouquets, it's like, okay, but what else? Oh, there's veils. Oh, there's flower girls. Oh, there's, diamond rings. Okay, what else? And it really forces you to kind of think about any possible thing that might fall into that category, and I have found that it's sometimes your later ideas that will blend really well with some of those early inspiration pieces that create really cool lyrics and lines. So don't be afraid to just keep asking yourself, what else? What else can I say about this concept? And eventually you'll run out, and it doesn't mean it needs to stop you from ever starting, but don't just write down the first two or three things. Be willing to brainstorm and sit with it a little longer.
Absolutely. Perfect advice to end on. Paige, it was lovely having you. This was a ton of fun. Can you share with the listeners where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, this was so much fun. Honestly, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this episode and I can't wait to write this song with you. If anyone listening is interested in finding me online, you can find me on Instagram at Paige Ruderman underscore. You can also find me on Twitter at Paige Ruderman. Connect with me there. I love music and I love chatting. So please reach out.
Perfect. Yes, guys, follow Paige, and she is hopefully going to have music coming out at some point. Am I right?
Yes, I have a couple songs that I absolutely love that when they are ready to come out, I would, love to share them and who knows, maybe come back and talk a little bit more about those songs.
Perfect. Well, Paige, it was lovely having you. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Paige all about free writing. And of course, until next time, stay
Stay
right
right
on
on
track.
track.